All right, this is Gavin Mehl. We got Cryptorick on today with us. We're going to go through some of everything, all about him, learn about him, about his channel, what he's doing, and how we can integrate this all. You guys probably know I've been doing a lot of videos on the Craig Wright Satoshi trial versus Copa, and so. But I'm sorry, yeah, Rick. Is that your first name, Rick? That's what I should call
Yes.
you. All right. Well, Gavin Mehl, it's nice to meet you, and I'm super glad to have you today. So,
Thank you for having me, Gavin.
yeah, and your channel if it's cryptocurrent.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, cryptocurrent on YouTube. So everybody subscribe to him on there. You've got some incredible videos that I've been following. A friend of mine in the Philippines recommended. Maybe it's a friend of both of ours is the one that connected us, and so said that I have to connect with you. So here we are today, and I just wanted to first before we get started, who is Rick? How can people
Yeah.
learn a bit more who you are, your
Yeah.
background?
So my background is basically a couple of years ago through some serendipitous events. I ended up getting into the cryptocurrency space. I've always been wanting to get into crypto, but I'd never really had that moment. That moment occurred when a relative of mine told me he downloaded Binance and bought some crypto, and I was like, oh wow, like you got to show me. So he showed me how to buy. He showed me how to open it up and buy it. And then after that, I started wanting to know which coins I should actually buy, because there was about 100, and I did what every noob does. I just started buying some XRP, some Cardano, just whatever coin was out there. And then I started looking into YouTube videos to help me guide that decision. And I came across, I think it was Coin Geek, where he basically did summaries of each video for each crypto. And I thought, hey, this is good. They're very good deep dives, but they're like 40 minutes long. Is there any kind of channel that I can go to that has it maybe in 5 or 10 minutes? So I realized that there was a gap in the market, and I decided, hey, why don't I do that? So then I started off the channel basically doing what I branded as light dives. So they're deep dives, but much shorter, about 5 to 10 minutes, just giving a snapshot of what the coin was, how much it was, where to buy it from, what it does, etc. After that, it kind of led me to the XRP space, and I started off in the XRP Army. I was kind of swept up in the whole, this will be used for banking and stuff. So I got into the whole, ISO 2002 kind of coins marketing. But I realized that the price of XRP had never changed. And I kind of got, annoyed, like many people, and I started researching why. Why is that? So one thing led to another. I started finding out some things here and there, doing some deep dive and research. And then through a serendipitous encounter on Twitter, Craig Wright at that time was speaking against XRP, and I kind of invited him to my channel. He agreed. We started talking about it, XRP and BSV. And then that's what led me into the BSV after talking to Craig Wright myself. And I realized that, this guy was very intelligent and definitely was consistent with the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto. Did my own research in there, and then basically started getting into the more, nuanced side of BSV and Bitcoin and that. And I mainly transitioned. And then basically I started doing more analysis and finding out little things about BSV, the esoteric parts of it, the conspiratorial parts of it, the trial, more research on that. And the rest is history. The channel has been up and running for a couple of years now, and it's growing. And
All right, so it sounds like the interview you did with Craig Wright, which was just about 1 year ago, almost exactly. It was last January. Was your first exposure to Bitcoin SV? Really, your very
yeah,
early?
so before that, I kind of knew there was some forks of Bitcoin, but I didn't really know much about BSV. I heard it once or twice, but never really took it seriously. It wasn't until I met Craig that because as you know, to be like an interviewer, you have to do some background reading as to who you're interviewing, what their coin is. So I actually had to sit down and do like a crash course on what BSV was prior to interviewing. So then when I did the research, I realized that, hey, this is actually scalable Bitcoin, sub-penny transaction, aiming for millions TPS with Terranode, has all these patents, like thousands of patents. How did I miss this? So that's when the penny dropped for me that BSV was going to be a monster, basically.
So it seems like you'd been doing all these other cryptos and doing videos on all the other popular cryptos for years, or for what, a couple years, and you somehow just completely missed Bitcoin SV. You said until literally.
That's right. So yeah, I was at that time, my headspace was mainly in the banking coins. So Stellar Lumens, XRP, XDC. I was mainly doing the research around then. At the time, I always neglected Bitcoin because a part of me knew it was never going to be used because BTC's fees were outrageous. It was slow. I never really entertained that thought that Bitcoin in any way, like BTC, was going to ever do anything. I knew it was just there for historical purposes. So I never really got into the BTC army because I knew intuitively that it was never going to be. But for some reason, I was not aware that there was a scalable Bitcoin like BSV, and I was not aware that they had that much patents. I was not aware that Craig Wright at the time was Satoshi Nakamoto. Like most people, you just hear the psyop about him being fake Toshi and stuff. And you never really go down that rabbit hole because there's no incentive to, because you just, unless you, like what happened to me, had the chance encounter to actually meet him, the penny only drops when you're forced to encounter that idea.
All right, so take us back into that before we go into other subjects. If you could take us back into that. What was it, about an hour long meeting? Was there any, with the meeting and what you guys discussed, and perhaps even what you guys discussed off the record? It looks like you guys talked about David Schwartz and XRP, and Craig Wright had his outbursts regarding this. So yeah, just please tell us more about the interview and what you learned off the record, and if you can share it and on the record.
Sure. The first thing that I noted was that it was one of the most difficult interviews I've had to conduct because Craig Wright's obviously infinitely more intelligent, and you got to be very sharp with it, and he doesn't really like stupid people, so you have to kind of make sure that you're well versed. So that was the first thing. The second thing that many people don't know is that interview was actually shot 3 times, because what happened was the first time we did the interview, it was actually accidentally not recorded. So we did the entire hour interview, but it wasn't recorded. So I'm like, oh, like, what are we going to do then? And I thought,
Oh man, I
sure.
bet you he was pissed.
I know. I thought that's it. Like knowing Craig's temperament, I doubt he's going to return. So I thought I'd miss the big opportunity. He was pleasant enough to basically say, I'll come back again. He came back again the following week because he's a busy man, and then said, okay, let's do it this time. The second time there was an issue with the update, like the Zoom version. So then that got abandoned. Again, we recorded a couple, but then it was basically just malfunctioned. And I thought, for sure, like, this is just my worst luck. Yeah, I was like, this is my worst luck. And his secretary said, no, don't worry, Craig has a lot of energy. He'll come back a third time. So he came back a third time. And then before we record, I said, are you sure it's recording? Can I just get a confirmation? Yes, it's recording. I can see the recording side. It's done. It's good. So the third time was the charm. And yeah, it was a very eye-opening interview, because that's when, I guess, the XRP banking stuff really just collapsed. It would collapse before then, but that was kind of like the final confirmation. In terms of little things here and there.
Before you go up, what do you mean XRP banking collapse? What is that?
Well, at the time, there was this psyop that XRP was going to be the global reserve currency and all of that. And a lot of my viewers, a lot of people at the time, they really did think that that was going to be and there's a lot of people that still do think that, by the way. So what
Okay,
I'm
well,
saying,
let's clear the air on that. So,
yeah,
so are you saying that that's now come out that that was a psyop? Because I mean, that's
yes.
still a rumor. I have friends that still believe that. And they tell me by XRP, it's going to go to the moon. And I just don't entertain it. So please inform us. What do you know?
Well, basically, the way that Ripple makes its money is basically through the sales of the token. And what they do is they pay partners, who they call partnerships. They pay the partners to say, hey, we're using XRP, but they're not really not. Basically, what gave it away was the tech for me. You can't have a scalable type Visa solution at 1,500 TPS. No way. And Craig Wright noted that in the interview. Ripple is a company. Its partnerships grow, but that doesn't mean XRP's partnership grows, and that's what a lot of people not like they confound is the coin versus the company. So the company definitely has partnerships, but does that imply that they're using the coin? A lot of people say yes. I would argue no. The point is that Craig basically said that he and you asked for some tidbits. He basically implied to me that there was a lot of banking partnerships with BSV, that CBDCs would run on BSV. And then when I tried to get more information, he basically told me he couldn't. And for me, I take note on that because that means there's a lot of NDAs and there's probably a lot of things that's going to come out about BSV, like partnerships with BSV, IBM, that kind of stuff. And it's all going to come out in due time.
So it seems like you've closed the book now on the whole idea that XRP is the banking reserve or the CBDC, all that. That's
That's
100% you've closed that. That's no longer even a maybe that's out. You've told your subscribers that's over. XRP.
It's over, and they've known it's been over for many years now.
Okay. Well, good.
And yeah,
I appreciate you telling me that because I mean I'm just more curious. So that's interesting. So now going to the BSV stuff, it sounds like you've done the research on the patents. Back to the Craig Wright interview. Tell me about more. Sounds like he talked about CBDCs as well. And what else can you tell us about what you know off the record? Or you had 3 interviews with him, so there's probably a lot more than what's in the 51 minutes. So
2 failed interviews and 1 finally successful. But basically, I started probing the question about, whether this was a deep state operation, whether, what really happened to Kleiman. And again, his silences and sometimes his outbursts gave more information than the actual answer he gave himself. And that was all noted, like subconsciously in the back of my mind that, that there's actually more to this story than what meets the eye. And basically, a lot, like I asked him about how BSV underwent a 51% attack, like a majority attack. He said, it was just a problem with the miners or something. And there's just little things here and there that just didn't add up. And basically, I came to a conclusion that this was actually the rabbit hole went deeper with BSV and Craig Wright.
all right, so it sounds like that it inspired you to somehow do a lot of more of a deep dive and do some decoding. Because I see you talk a lot about decoding, and what is the background on this whole decoding thing that you have, or the inspiration?
Sure. The background inspiration is basically understanding that I guess the world works on numbers. And the reality that we live, whether you want to call it a matrix or a simulation, works on numbers. And so there's this thing called gematria, which a lot of people may know, which is, you put words, phrases into like a online kind of gematria calculator. It comes up with a number, and these numbers are proved to be significant. But basically what I found is that the numbers showed a different story than what we were led to believe. So as an example, if you type in Phoenix, which is the concept of this coin or this currency or this world kind of rising from the ashes, it's 36 in Chaldean, which is the most accurate cipher. Now, interestingly, the Copa trial was 36 years and 36 days from the Phoenix Economist magazine. So there was a famous magazine published in 1988, which some say were predictive programming. It had the symbol of a phoenix, and on it was a gold coin with 2018, which is actually the year BSV was forked. So Feb 5, 2024, which is the Copa trial start date, was actually the 36th day of the year, 36 years from the magazine publication date in 1988. And it was also basically Bitcoin SV in Golden Phi, which is another cipher, is 36. 3 6s are 666. So it's basically inferring that BSV is going to be the beast system. It's going to be the base layer where everything is basically publicly tracked. There's going to be a verifiable public ledger for everyone, you know, and there's going to be there's going to be somewhat privacy, but it's every transaction's going to be logged. Every data point is going to be logged. So as an example, you walk into your house, it's going to have a transaction code saying, you know, check in this time, this date. You know, you log on your IP address to the internet, you log on to this website, it gets logged on the BSV blockchain that you logged in, like your IP address, got logged in, you know, at this date, this time, so on. So that's the beast system. Then if you go to, I guess, Satoshi Nakamoto, it's 55 in Chaldean, which is actually the devil's number. And in golden ratio, it's 69. And 69 was the top of the Bitcoin price, $69,000. Craig Wright himself, if you put Craig Wright, you get 36 as well in golden ratio, and you get 69 as well. So the date that BSV was forked, quote unquote, was 2018. 18 times 2 is 36. So you know, the other thing is you know, on the Economist magazine, the volume was volume 306, right? So and I'm not even making this up, you know, it was pages 9 to 10, 91 being again the Phoenix, because there's different ciphers in gematria. In gematria, there's multiple ciphers. In another cipher, the Phoenix is 91. So that's why they like to do things on 9-1. Now, the numbers are telling me a different story. And what I've come to basically summarize is that you've got this currency that they've been wanting to roll out for greater than, you know, since 1988. And they've hired a lot of people to do this. You know, they got people like Adam Back to do the, you know, the hashing or the other type technology. They got all these kind of contractors, if you will, to come in and do their bit. They got you know, Craig Wright. He had a lot of credentials at the time. He basically secured the Australian Stock Exchange, like the system that it uses. They got people like Hal Finney, Dave Kleiman, a lot of people who were very you know, advanced in terms of their cryptography and computer science to develop this. They were actually deep state, what I call military industrial contractors. So we know this because Craig Wright's company, the one that he formed with Kleiman, was called W&K Defense Information, something like Defense Info. And you're thinking, why would someone put a company called Defense, like call their company name with the defense name? It's because he wanted a defense contract. Now, on paper, it's we know that he applied for a Department of Homeland Security contract, and it was informally declined. But we know when they say that, it usually means it got accepted, but on the kind of black budget. Interestingly, Craig Wright's previous precursor to Bitcoin was called Blacknet. Again, what was the purpose? You know, it was trying to create a couple of things: untraceable money for the elite, but traceable money for the public, and programmable central bank digital currencies, and everything basically on a public verifiable ledger. So in my opinion, what happened was they hired all these contractors, and these are all Satoshi Nakamoto. But Satoshi Nakamoto is a concept. And then basically what they did was they created multiple Bitcoins. They created the first one, BTC, as a test, like a beta test coin, to basically iron out, what were the problems? How did the public uptake it? Were there any issues, any bugs? Basically, a soft rollout. And then what they did was they then forked it to actually increase their earnings. So what they did is, when you forked BTC or you forked Bitcoin Cash, you basically got a 1-for-1. So you got an extra coin. So then that gave those coins value. So now they actually increase their value. But at the same time, they're doing this to distract people so that there's a lot of choices to choose from. And we know that these forks weren't done by individuals. People always say, oh, you got Roger Ver, oh, you got, Craig Wright over here, and then you've got Michael Saylor over here. But these are all the same people in the same club. They're all just playing a role. I always say behind every, geek is a suit, and we know that from the numerology that, it wasn't Roger Ver who forked, he's just the face that they put. It's like Sam Bankman-Fried. They just put this geek that someone can put the blame on and say, hey, there's the enemy. But in reality, it's actually the suits, the hidden hand, that's actually doing all these things. And, they were always planning to unroll this global reserve currency, or this global bridge currency. And in my opinion, that's going to be Bitcoin SV. That's going to act as a base layer. And then all the blockchains will be built on top of it, so that you would always have a third verifiable ledger. So as an example, let's say I'm using Stellar Lumens, but I disagree with the transaction. I can then also correspond that with the BSV blockchain and say, no, there's a second witness to say that that actually went to here. And I think that's the plan. It's like, if you can imagine BSV as being a pizza, all the other blockchains are like the cheese on top. And then you've got these then private silos, which are like these pepperonis on top, but it's all going to be on the BSV base chain.
Seems like you're pretty confident about that. That's a fascinating lead up in the story. So it looks like you've come to the conclusion that there's been a lot of numbers that you've added up. I think you mentioned 36 and another number that was relevant. So, and everything's potentially going to be built on BSV. But it sounds like I would say the way you described it was very. Would you say it's very dark, or is there any hope at the end of this? I mean, that was the.
Well, okay. So here's the thing. Someone once said a quote. They said, at the highest levels of finance, there's scarcely to be found a good guy. We know that the people very high up in finance that create these kinds of technology, they're not usually good people. But what good and bad is rather amorphous. It's good for them to create this kind of structured society. It's bad for us because we lose our privacy. But what I'm saying is this something for freedom? No. Is this something that people think, is something to get excited about? I mean, if you're a BSV holder, yes. But if you're someone who's kind of come late to the party, this is basically going to be the end of cash as we know it. And it's basically going to unroll out the beast system. So BSV is the beast. And I don't say that with any intention for good or bad. It is what it is. And the people like Craig, even his name, right? We know that Craig Wright is not his real name. And you can see very clearly because, Craig S Wright. You know, Craig, and if you rearrange that, it becomes Craig was right. You know, so they gave him this identity and said, hey, you're going to be Satoshi, you're going to be the guy who was right. You know, and what they did was they created the term fake Toshi, and they said that this is going to be the script. We're going to laugh at you, we're going to pay you out, we're going to make everyone discount you. And the same way that the deep state created the word conspiracy theorist to discredit any serious inquiry, they also created the word fake Toshi, and they gave him a script. They said, hey, be the angry, pissed off Australian guy, be the foul mouth, because no one's going to suspect Satoshi to be this foul mouthed Australian. And where every article comes up saying he's fake, he's a fraud, blah, blah, blah. And you look at people like Vitalik, you know, he says, oh, you know, Craig's a fraud, fake Toshi. Then you go CZ, this is what gave it away. CZ said that the reason he delisted BSV was because it was, quote, a fraud and a scam. And yet he lists 1,000 fraud scam tokens a day, right? Every meme coin, every crap coin you can think of, every poopy coin, he has listed on Binance, but he has not listed BSV. So that shows you that that's what gave the psyop away, is that his reasoning for saying the whole you know, with delisting BSV is basically showing you that they're not wanting people to access BSV easy. They want to make it hard for you to store. They want to make it hard for you to buy. And they're going to blame it on this psyop that, oh, you know, he's a fraudster, he's a fake. And then they actually, this is how deep the rabbit hole goes. They actually pay people like HODLNOT, right? People think, oh, HODLNOT's just some random guy. No, HODLNOT is what I call an implant. He's been implanted in the space to create this back and forth, this chess match, this, you know, the enemy to Craig Wright. You know, we know he has links to Lightning Labs. We know he had significant funding. 1 minute he's a teacher, then the next minute he's an engineer. You know, his story doesn't add up. They create these, what I call Hegelian dialectic, to basically create this back and forth so that people think there's actually fights going on. Oh, Michael Saylor said something bad about Craig Wright. Oh, Craig Wright said something about David Schwartz. David Schwartz said something bad about this. They create the illusion of separation, but they're actually all in on it. And this is what I want to say is that this is all the single guiding hand controlling all the narratives together. And as an example, you have Richard Hart. I don't know if you saw the video, Gavin, but there's Richard Hart sitting in the front seat and Craig Wright's on stage. And Richard Hart's like, oh, you're a fake, you're a fraudster. You know, what about the wallets? And then Craig Wright had to walk off awkwardly because the music stopped. But ask yourself this question: why was Richard Hart, who's a known opponent of Craig Wright, why would he buy a front row ticket to go and see Craig Wright speak? Why would they place him front row seats where he is actually within audible distance? It's almost as though he was implanted there to say what he needed to say. You know, once you think about it like that, the entire industry, you see it for what it really is. And the truth is, in my opinion, that 99% of cryptos are actually controlled by the same 1% of people. And it's just this illusion of variation and choice. And they put these people like Vitalik, they put these, you know, Chinese, that, you know, they have, you know, CCP connections, they have Putin type connections, they have all these, you know, Russian connections, and they just put these people as like the fallout guy. And then we're supposed to believe that they're just creating their own blockchain, you know, that some guy who picks his nose created Ethereum, and every time he walks around, he's got 100 people swooning around him, you know, his handlers. And it's just a little bit bizarre, but anyway.
It is, yeah. This is great. Well, I got to do a little cliffhanger here with one of the things you brought up about HODLNOT, which, you know, I think it'll be an interesting, you know, preview. I want to set the stage on an upcoming video. and give background, because by the time this video comes out, this next interview will have already been shot. So I can talk about this now. I wouldn't want to release this prior to tomorrow. I've got attorney David Pierce. Attorney David Pierce is the attorney that is in the courtroom with HODLNOT at the Copa trial. They sit together. All right. So whether he's actually HODLNOT's attorney, I don't know, but he's an attorney in the UK, and he's sitting with HODLNOT in the courtroom. All right. So I'm having him on tomorrow. So it'll be interesting for me to, for him to share his whole perspective on, and I mean, I'm excited to give him a platform. Like, hey, tell us all about the court trial. What's going on in the courtroom, and it'll be really curious to let people make their own decision on whether what he says is believable or not, so it'll be,
and look, as I say, it's real. It's a real court case, but it's fake in the sense that it's pre-planned. So the dates are pre-planned. I mean, look at the schedule of Copa, right? Like I said, it began on a very significant day, the 36th day of the year, 36 years from the Phoenix, etc. On day 5 of February, which is the second month, so 5 to 25, which is crypto in gematria. But what I want to say is, look at the dates. It ends around about March, right? So they planned the outcome of the court trial just before the halving. Could you believe? They put a court case outcome just before the halving in April, because they know that all the miners are going to dump. So they plan the bad news, or they plan the big reveal that, Craig Wright is now Satoshi Nakamoto. Oh my God, we're panicking. Now we're selling. They did it around about when they were going to sell anyway, which is near the halving. That comes across as very fishy to me.
That's very,
yeah.
Let me ask you, you made a bold claim that Craig W. Wright, or I'm sorry, Craig S. Wright was right, and that wasn't his real name. Please, do you have anything to back that up? That's a very, very interesting nuance, but what do you have to back that up or believe that?
So I don't know if people watch a lot of, Born Identity or any of these kind of films, but usually the federal agents, if you're a federal contractor, you're normally given an identity, you're normally given a passport, and you're basically for protection purposes as well. Like, could you imagine, let's say you're a federal agent, you're dealing with all this gangs and mafias and all this kind of crime. Would you want to put your real name out there? You wouldn't, right? You wouldn't go and say, hey, I'm Gavin and I'm here to expose the mafia.
Right.
So when you're a federal contractor, which Craig is, he's a federal government contractor, and he's stated this openly. He's worked with the governments, with things like the NSA and the Department of Homeland Security. You're given an identity, you're given a name, you're given a role to play. So it's not inconceivable that Craig Wright is what we call a DBA, a doing business as alias, right? So you're doing business as this name. It doesn't mean necessarily it's his fake name. It just means that that's his alias name. And it just a little bit, it's just hard to believe that the guy who creates Satoshi Nakamoto, when you put his name into the calculator, like I said, if you put Craig Wright into this gematria calculator, in the golden fire ratio, it's 36. So someone has planned this to give him this name, but also if you actually just look at it, if you just rearrange the W and the S, it's Craig was right. Now, think about it. It's like, this isn't a coincidence. Like, this is not something, a person's name who's like John Smith or something. This is someone who was doubted, who has said, you're wrong, you're fake, blah, blah, blah. And now suddenly Craig was right. He's right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it sounds like there's hope. So, I mean, it sounds like a very hopeful, nuance. I want to ask you as well about your video that you did, where you mentioned a guy called Pena on his prediction about BTC. And if you could talk a little bit about that, the BTC and BSV correlation with Pena and what you know on the background about that.
Yeah. So Dan Peña went on record to basically say that, if you knew what I knew, that when the founder of Bitcoin returns, in my opinion, and there's nothing humble about me, he goes, BTC is going to go to zero. And at that time, it was very shocking because Bitcoin was doing very well. People thought, this is going to keep going up and up and up to, $1 million, and so on. And he basically gave us a breadcrumb. He basically said, when the true founder of Bitcoin is brought to light, so he's already hinting that Satoshi Nakamoto will return. He's saying when that identity is revealed and you're going to know who has the association, he says Bitcoin's going to go to zero. Now, a lot of people have said, no, that's referring to Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin has nothing to do with it. Some people are saying, oh, no, he's referring to Epstein. And yes, I could see that narrative developing that, actually, Epstein actually funded the BTC fork. And then as a result, it's been outlawed or something. And then BTC crashes. But I think he was actually veiling a reference to Craig Wright. And this is what people probably have not put the two and two together. He's very clearly, he said, when the founder, Epstein was not the founder, he was the financier of the BTC fork, but he was not the founder of Bitcoin. So what Dan Peña was saying was, when Craig Wright comes back, returns in a more public setting, is proven to be Satoshi Nakamoto, BTC is going to go to zero. And there's multiple reasons for that. And this is what I listed in my video. I said there's three reasons.
Before you go to those reasons, what gives Pena credibility?
Pena is, we know he's a billionaire. And billionaires just have a knack of getting inside information that is not available to the rest of us. So he's not correct because he's a smart man, but he's not correct because he's got any experience with crypto or he knows anything about crypto, although I do think he knows a lot. But just in that position with the people that you talk to, you just naturally get inside information. You know what I'm saying? So imagine being around billionaires and, you might meet someone who created that crypto and being like, hey, what's the plan? Well, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to sell all my BTC at this date, at this time. He probably met with Michael Saylor and all these people. So his credibility comes from his entourage effect, not necessarily who he is or what he knows. It's mainly who he's around and what inside information he can get. We know that all these people are part of the same club. Like I mentioned, Richard Hart, Craig Wright, Michael Saylor, Jack Dorsey, they're all the same in the same club. I wouldn't be surprised if Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, and Craig Wright are having a whiskey right now, having a laugh and laughing at us because they're just creating this illusion that they're against each other. But anyway, so that's what gives Dan Peña credibility, is that from the tone of his voice, it seems he knows something's coming, a black swan. Now, I did a little bit more research into giving people the reasons why Dan Peña is correct. So the first reason is patent. If Craig Wright is proven to be the owner of the patent and the trademark of Bitcoin, it means that BTC can no longer operate under the trade name of Bitcoin. So that coin, call it whatever coin you want to call it, it cannot be called Bitcoin anymore. So that alone will cause a massive reduction in the price because people are going to want to buy the authentic Bitcoin, which will be deemed BSV. And later on, they're going to change the name to BIT, I think, BIT. But the second reason is the halving. So when the halving comes, the reward for mining Bitcoin or BTC is going to be reduced. So imagine I say, this year you're going to get 100,000, and in another 4 years you're going to get 50,000, and then in another 4 years you're going to get 25,000. your likelihood to do that job is going to reduce every 4 years because the incentive basically halves. So we're coming to a critical point in April where it's no longer feasible to keep mining and selling Bitcoin anymore. So that's why they put the Copa trial around about that date, because when the news comes out, they're going to blame it on the news, but it's really the halving and they're going to just dump it all and sell it all. So that's the second reason why Dan Peña is correct. The third reason is quite simple. When BSV goes live with Terranode, which for those people that don't know, it means BSV will be scalable to millions transactions per second. No one's going to want to buy this unscalable piece of crap token that doesn't scale, that has high gas fees, that is associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and also the narrative will say. And no one's going to want to touch it with a 7-foot pole. So they're going to all start to sell their BTC and convert it to BSV. So it's going to be a magnifying effect. It's not one thing alone. It's going to be multiple things where BSV will be deemed Bitcoin. BTC can no longer use the trademark. The scalable tech no longer scales. And from what I've already heard, there's already problems with security and security flaws, and that's going to probably, there's going to be some hacking or something, and that's going to be an excuse to basically get everyone over onto BSV. Now, the thing that adds to my theory that BSV is going to be the base layer for everything, data, information, money, commodities, everything, is you need something extremely scalable to do that job, to be the base layer. And Terranode is needed to scale millions TPS. And there's no other blockchain that I know of that could scale millions of transactions per second to basically be the base layer of the world. So if the technology didn't give it away and the conspiracy didn't give it away, then just basic math should have given it away that this is going to be the Phoenix Beast system.
It was amazing. So the Phoenix Beast, the Phoenix system. So sounds like you're bringing in the Phoenix stuff. I mean, is that how do you so that was back to the original Economist paper, and then potentially what some of the archaics research, Jason Bashir's research. Does that somehow fit into this at all, or what does your decoding stuff say?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the Economist. It comes back to archaics and his theory that there's going to be a Phoenix type event in 2040 or whatever. But it's when I say Phoenix, I also mean the concept of the old system dying, burning down, and then the new system rising from its ashes. And when I say the beast system, I mean the system which is basically designed to keep society in check. Some say it's designed to enslave society. I'm not sure about that. It's more so to keep society in check. And basically, like, let's say you stole $100 off me. Let's just say I go to the police. The police, yep, you stole that money. Now with the technology, you could actually program that money to then return to me, or mint me more coins, or change the transaction to say that actually now that I'm the owner again. And this is what Craig Wright was saying, was it's not going to be a system where it's like, freedom or whatever. It's one of accountability and recourse for action. So if a miner is produced a subpoena to say that you have to now change the transaction, to say that the money actually is owed to him, there's recourse for that, and you need that for a stable banking system. So a lot of people just want this crazy chaotic society where we're all doing peer-to-peer transactions, and that's fine, but it's all fun and games until you get robbed, and then you need to go to a central authority to get your money back, and then you're kind of wishing and praying that, there is tracking. No one wants tracking. Like, no one wants to be tracked for a cup of coffee they bought. But if you got robbed, you would want to know who took your money so that the authorities could track that person. So when I say the beast system, I say it in the sense of full accountability, full transparency, at least on paper. Of course, the elites probably have private stuff built out for them, Monero, whatever. But for us, the common person, this is the system that we're going to use to, move into this new world.
Sounds like you're pretty certain about that, being that this is the system going forward, and there's no doubt in your voice at all, and all the research that you've done. There's just absolutely no question about it.
For me, anyway, there's zero doubt, because the technology adds up, the patents line up, the numerology lines up, the legislation lines up. So people ask, okay, so what's the point of this Copa trial? It's basically, if I was a banker, I'm not going to deploy trillions of dollars until I know that the legality is there, right? So I'm going to want some ink on paper to say that, hey, it's now safe for me to deploy my trillions. So to get that ink, to get thing on paper to say that, it's all good, I'm going to need to go through a court case to establish that precedent. So if you look at the Copa trial as rather than this versus that, this versus that, this versus that, him versus her, it's actually a Hegelian dialectic to establish the proper legislative framework so that Bitcoin could become legal. But before you need to know if Bitcoin can become legal, you got to ask the questions, who owns the patents to it? What's the conditions for using the patents? Who's behind it? All these questions need to be fleshed out in a legislative environment. We're not seeing that with BTC. We're not seeing that with other coins. We know that, for instance, XRP, was kind of a fraction of that, but it's the Copa trial is just to allow the suits to advance the legislation so that when the legislation is finally advanced, they can then roll out Bitcoin as the global bridge currency, if you want to call it. And so that's the purpose of the Copa trial. It's not to say Zuckerberg against Craig Wright. It's not to say Dorsey against Craig Wright. It's not to say Craig Wright is the hero and Dorsey is the enemy. It's none of that. They're all actually working together. And this is what I believe in my mind. Judge Malloy is in on it. All of these characters are in on it. All the judges are pre-selected. We know, as an example, the person who presided in the Ripple case, which was Judge, I think it was Netburn and Torres, they were actually the same judges presiding in the Epstein case as well. So they are not just random type people. They are selected for a purpose to do. So, so the reason I'm not following, I follow the Copa trial, but I already know the outcome. The ultimate outcome is that Craig Wright will win. But here's the thing. They could do it in a couple of ways. They could have him lose, and then Craig Wright appeals and then wins the appeal. And they could have him lose, and then he moves the coins from his Satoshi wallet, and then he ends up winning ultimately. Or he just wins outright, or it goes to settlement and he wins either way. The long story short is he will win. The question is, how will he win? How will he get there? Is it through a loss and then an appeal? The ultimate question to ask is, how do you exhaust the legal system so that no one in the future can then question it? So the last thing you want to do is come up with an outcome, and then some schmuck 10 years down the track brings up new evidence and then tries to resurrect the case on an appeal. So like I said before, the banks want their ink. They want to start deploying their trillions, but they need that in paper, in law. So what you want to do, if you're the person creating this society and this new system, you will want to exhaust every legal option through appeals or through other possible, so that in the future it's untouchable. That case is done. We went through all the evidence, went through all the appeals, we exhausted everything, went through different levels of court. It's done. So that way the banks have peace of mind that they can now deploy their trillions of dollars without needing to worry about some guy challenging it. And that's why, in my opinion, I think it may possibly go to an appeal, or Craig may possibly lose in the interim, but then he'll appeal and then he'll win. But that's just for the purposes of ticking the box to say that, yep, we went to appeal and he won the appeal. And then
Funny, that's been my call as well, that he's going to lose at trial and win an appeal. That's just been my call, the way I've been evaluating the case right now. And I've been calling every day. It's like right now I'm seeing it at 3-3 on the daily trials. And I've been really doing my best to try to be as a neutral evaluation without all the other influence, just from what I'm seeing. So yeah, I did want to ask you, so, okay, what's, I'm thinking like, in law, like my perspective is kind of like looking at the law background. So what is the motive for Dorsey? If it's Dorsey versus Wright, let's just say Copa, let's just say that Dorsey's behind Copa. Let's theorize and humor me here for a moment. What's Dorsey's motive to let Wright win?
First, we have to understand who these characters are before we understand their motive. So Jack Dorsey is behind the PayPal type mafia. He was involved with Twitter for a bit. So he's in that kind of Elon type payments system. And that kind of crew, that Jack Dorsey type PayPal mafia crew, they were involved with, indirectly through their holdings or whatever, MasterCard, like basically the established banking system, right? So Jack Dorsey has everything to do with this because he is, at least on paper, involved with payments and finance. So he represents the old world in finance. And then
it seems like it's seems like it's completely opposite. I mean, on the surface, I'm seeing he would not want anything to do with Wright, because it seems like it's the other side. So, but you're saying that he wants Wright to win. I'm just
it's not that he wants Wright to win. It's just that it's in none of their control. Like, they're just the puppets. They're just the faces, and they're just told what to do. It's like being a Hollywood star. It's like being Justin Bieber. From the appearance, he looks powerful. He looks, in control. He looks like he's got it all. But then you've got people saying to him, "Hey, Justin, you've got a photo shoot in 2 hours. You got to be here and here, and you got to do this and this." And they may hate that because they're getting told what to do. It's the same thing with Jack Dorsey and Craig Wright. On the appearance, they look like they're behind everything. They're controlling everything. But they're just being told what to do, how to play the script, what to say, what not to say. We know that Jack Dorsey, as an example, was in the recent Super Bowl and he was wearing a Satoshi shirt. Now, do you really think that Jack Dorsey would want to wear a Satoshi shirt in public, for nothing? Like, he was basically, it's all just like,
on the biggest stage in the world. He's wearing
on the biggest stage in the world.
While this case is going on.
Exactly.
What's going on with that?
That's why I'm saying it's a real case, but it's a fake case. It's just to advance the legislation so that Bitcoin SV can now be deemed a legal commodity. And it's not a battle between Jack Dorsey and Craig Wright, because these people are in the same billionaire club. They're being paid the same way regardless. They're probably involved indirectly. I can guarantee you, from my opinion, that Jack Dorsey is a massive BSV whale. I can guarantee you Mark Zuckerberg is a massive BSV whale. I can guarantee you all these people like CZ, Vitalik, Richard Hart, anyone who criticizes Craig on paper, they are massive BSV whales, but they're not going to tell you that because it's a psyop. It's a psychological operation. They're not going to spoil the game yet. They want people to be scared of this asset. They want people to think Craig's a fraud. They don't want peasants buying this asset because, like I mentioned in my video, this is possibly the first quadrillion dollar asset in the world. And the reason I say this is because you've got a 21 million supply forever, and you've got a population of 10 billion people. Now, just with the ETFs alone, right? Just with the data going into it, right? Imagine if data is monetized and data goes on, all the data, all the internet goes on BSV. Because remember, the internet will be a side chain of BSV. Web3 will be a branch of BSV. So if you're running the internet on BSV and you're running data, and IBM has partnered with BSV and you're putting all the data on there, and you've only got 21 million coins, and you got 10 billion people using it a day, the network effect, that's 0.00000 of data being computed a day on BSV, using up BSV. You're looking at a multi-million-dollar asset here. You're not looking at so if you're in the system of, you're an elite person, you got a lot of money, you don't want 100,000 people buying BSV, because you've basically upset the apple cart, as they say. You've potentially minted another 1,000 billionaires, and those people create problems because then they want their own things, and so they had to keep this coin in obscurity. They had to create a psyop around it. They had to create this negative energy around it so that people won't inquire. And it worked. Like I said, I did daily crypto dives for years and I did not come across BSV because it never occurred to me. And the common person would not have come across BSV because there's that psyop again, fraudster, fake Toshi, and you've got this Bitcoin here, which is $60,000. It's like a big distraction.
So
but when you actually,
so when you were doing the deep dives, looking at all the cryptos, what would you go on CoinMarketCap and you see, oh, there's BSV, that's just a scam. Next, you already had it, or did you just not even look at it?
No, I didn't even look at it because I just didn't even know about it. And then the other thing was, I vaguely heard from the Vine that there's this Australian, because I'm Australian, so I only heard about Craig Wright because there was this Australian saying he was Satoshi. But then every time I looked up an article, it just said fake Toshi and fraud, and this at the time it almost looked as though like.
So there was no way to get through the weeds, at least not without going super deep down the rabbit hole, where everything you looked at, oh, this guy's a con man. Why would I bother going any further?
Yeah. And it worked for me because it was like, at the time, it was just like, who is this crazy person in Australia saying that they're Satoshi? Because we were imprinted, through psychological operations, that this Satoshi guy is a Japanese guy, he's a humble guy, he's a benevolent guy, that, they'd show us photos of statues, gold statues, this guy, mysterious guy. And that added to the allure of the identity of Satoshi. And then they contrasted that abruptly with this impolite, harsh Australian guy who sticks up his rude finger and stuff. And people are like, no way this could be Satoshi. So this is part of the Hegelian dialectic, is you enhance the white piece, and then you enhance the black piece, and then you make them play the game of chess. And it wasn't until I actually met Craig Wright that I put the psyop aside and said, hang on, let me start from scratch. Let me start from no presuppositions, without no fake Toshi, without no fraud labeling, and let's just objectively see what his evidence was. And then when I did that, I was shocked because everything pointed to the fact that he was Satoshi, but also part of the Satoshi team. Remember, Satoshi is not one individual. It's a group of probably 10 to 20 individuals, contractors for the military industrial complex, CIA, NSA, and they're given this Satoshi title. But Craig Wright is definitely at the head of it.
Well, it's definitely interesting. It sounds like what's beautiful, what I like about what you just said here is that you went into the interview very open-minded, and it's almost like kind of like virgin to the entire concept by meeting Craig Wright. It wasn't like you'd like, oh, the fork, and you were jaded. You hadn't been through that. It was like you're curious, you want to meet this Australian guy. Somehow he gave you the opportunity for two failed, screwed up interviews, and he gave you another chance. That's pretty telling. I got to say, that's pretty amazing about his character to even do that. I'm really surprised a guy that busy would
I know,
give you
and
another chance.
that's why I'm very appreciative. Even though I say things like he's a puppet and stuff, I say that like respectfully. I just say that I'm just saying what it is. But as an individual, yes, he's a very a good guy, and that's what I'm saying is you gotta see past the theatrics and the psyop.
Yeah, well, it's interesting what you're saying. I definitely take everything open and give you the platform here to give everyone the message and let them make the decision on their own. I mean, I will say on the other side that Craig Wright's testifying in court that he is the only, guy as Satoshi. So perhaps there's double meaning to that because a lot of things that he's saying is very there's so much depth to what he talks about, and only guy, so there's nobody else. I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
that's what he's saying, but perhaps there's
Look,
more.
look. In this day and age, who creates something in a bubble? Let's be realistic. Like, even when you go to work, are you able to do everything by yourself? No. Something of this logistical scale needs a team. You need someone to do this. You need a team to do that. No invention really happens in a bubble. There's always somebody there doing some role. So this is why I'm saying is like, I'm sure there was about 10 to 20 what I'd call minor people that helped debug. Like, we know Hal Finney debugged the BSV protocol. We know David Kleiman wrote the BSV white paper. We know Kleiman probably did a lot of other things. We know, for instance, Adam Back helped with the hashing. David Chom probably helped in some way because he's known as the father of cryptography. And yes, Craig coordinated it all and happens to be the face of it. So yes, he's going to be given the adage that, yes, you're Satoshi Nakamoto. And of course, he'll claim that he's the sole Satoshi Nakamoto. But truth and reality are two different things.
So it sounds like you make the bold prediction that he's going to win, whether it's on a trial or on appeal or on settlement, one way or the other. You're making that prediction, and you're making the tying all these things together. I will leave people on the point them in the direction, backing up one of the things you said about the patents, and that is N-chain. If people want to go and do the research on N-chain and their CBDC patents, and read those, and I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, but I would love to have some attorneys or very legal-minded scholars come back and point out those patents and contact Rick or myself and say, I read through all those patents, hear what they say, and they're all BS, or no, those are really sound, and they do actually have patents over the whole CBDC industry. I'd like to find out.
Yeah, and just on that patent thing, my colleague, he's a patent attorney, and I said to him, how much does it cost to maintain one patent? He said $100,000 a year, something like that. So the fact that N-chain has 5,000 or so of these patents, number one, shows you there's a lot of big money backing it, which again should hopefully complete the loop of my theory that N-chain is just the establishment but restructured. There's billions behind N-chain. There's billions to maintain the patents. There's billions to produce the patents because you need engineers, you need blah, blah, blah. And so hopefully people are understanding that this is a patent war and the winner is going to be N-chain. And, you should follow the patents.
Yeah, and as we get down to closing here, this has been fascinating. We got to do this again. I just want to look like kind of a tailspin here with the N-chain. I don't know if you've looked into this, but I've came up with this name, a nickname for him that I've trademarked now, and I've just come up with it, but hopefully I get to run with it. And I am going to interview him here real soon. It's the Titan. I'm calling him the Titan of blockchain, and that's Mr. Calvin Ayre. And I'm wondering if you have done any research on how he fits into this entire puzzle at all. Because I think he'd be really happy at the end of the day if he watches this interview to say, well, great, looks like I'm going to win at the end of the day, because that's
Look, Calvin is a very nice guy. I like the guy. He's obviously very smart, putting all of his money into BSV and into N-Chain. That being said, I do think once again he was installed as a as a board member by the suits. So I tracked the funding of N-Chain, and long story short, it ended up with Arab money. So Abu Dhabi investment authorities and stuff and such. So you have these Arab authorities throwing money at this company. Calvin obviously brings his own wealth and playing his role, but long story short, I think they're going to be successful in any case.
It's refreshing. I appreciate it. This is totally a new insight and like literally very open, refreshing information. Anything I've ever talked about or even considered. So I can't thank you enough. And I will send you an email after this so we can then like reschedule another talk after this if you're open to it.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for the talk.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. I'll go ahead and end the recording there. Thank you so much for coming on. Everybody just like, comment, subscribe to my channel and also on Rick's channel, which is what, Rick?
Cryptocurrent, and then brackets Cryptorick.
Oh, nice. All right. We'll see you at the top, and stay on a little longer, Rick. Thank you, everybody.